Hello everyone, I'm back with another video. This one is going to be a little different. I'm going to go through someone's track that they have sent me and basically organize everything into these groups that I have made after searching through his stems, and I'm going to talk about all of them. If anyone's not too interested in watching this video, well then you don't have to. This video might be good for people who are think they might make music like this, and maybe they can take the feedback for themselves as well. So the person's track, his name is Kristian. Anyone can do this. It's gonna cost at the moment probably 10 USD per track. You can send me basically a track of something, a shit ton of stems already bounced, and then I will go through the project for you and talk about things in an organized sort of fashion. I'm going to basically make a little list of things that I'm basically going to make a little table of contents, and then you can just go to those points of the video where I start talking about these things, and it'll be a little interlude or whatever, and then I'll start talking about things. So we'll start with the percussion and stuff, and then I can go over other tips that I might have to offer for this person or on this track. Play the whole song at once, but it is 6 minutes and 9 seconds, so I don't even think I'm gonna play the whole song at once. Trust me though, I have listened to the song a few times before I even started recording this. I've even already recorded this whole thing before. However, he found me a way to send the stems out of Ableton, so I'm gonna redo it for him. And then I can go through and listen to them after, or point out some things. But there's not much for me to really say about the groups, other than maybe try not to leave much of your processing to the group point. If you're gonna group your basses, for example, you maybe shouldn't even do that much compression or anything on the bass tracks. Anything that has verbs, say for the leads, all these leads go to the same reverb. I have them in groups already. The piano separate, I didn't know where to put it. Then I have anything that I would consider a sound effect organized in the FX. And then I have a percussion section, which basically is going to cover your kick and snare and all those sorts of things with loud transients. So the first thing I believe you wanted to know was, how do you do the virtual riot sidechain? So how that works is you'll have some sort of trigger. So on the top, I have a sidechain track and a trigger track. One's MIDI, one's not. In this trigger track, I have it being sent to the sidechain track. So I'll send it to the master. The trigger track is just a massive. In this massive, there's no oscillators, there's just noise. Sounds like this. Now, it's a very unpleasant sound to listen to, so that's why it's not intended to be listened to. It's just a little click out of massive, and it does absolutely nothing. Then what happens is it goes to a sidechain channel. So this sidechain channel is just an audio track, and in here we have a FabFilter Pro C with some settings. Doesn't even matter what the settings are. But I might turn down the threshold to the lowest, and then do the volume control kind of on the ratio. So it's just kind of one knob at this point. Oh no, and then I ruined it. I ruined the sidechain. Okay, wrong button. Oh cool, I undid the sidechain. Now it's back. Oh wow. Okay, so then, because this sort of plugin has a side input option hidden within it, you can't access it from here like you can, say, on a glue compressor, where you put down a glue compressor, and then you have a sidechain option here, and you can select where from. Not quite. So the way this one works is you actually have to come down to the trigger, and then I send it to the sidechain, and then I have to make sure the audio is going to the stereo side in, not the track in. So then what happens is whenever I play this, it's going to go to that channel, but it's not going to be heard because it's triggering the empty side of the compressor. So it's just going to do this. If you listen to the audition, you'll hear it. If you're using something like FabFilter Pro C, you also have to make sure that your external is on. And now we have this. How I like to organize my projects is I do it with drums, basses, synth, samples, and I basically group all of those 4 things. And then I take the group masters and I'll send their audio to the sidechain to the track in. So then what happens, I send it to the track in part, make sure it has no audio from, and then now my percussion group is going to the sidechain, which is just an example, but I'll do this with the basses, the samples, and synths. And then what I do, if there's something I don't want to be sidechain, I'll just send it straight to the master or whatever from there, because you can still route it internally from the group to not go to the group master. You can send it somewhere else. That's how I do that, and that's the virtual riot method, and how he does basically the global sidechain, though it's not coined by him or anything. It's just a workflow that he uses. That's how you do that. If you didn't have a FabFilter Pro C, just use a glue compressor, and then just take from the trigger. And then what happens now is you have to make sure that the trigger is going to the sends only, and you're not using any sends control to actually send the audio to the send. So it's just blankly playing for no reason. You know if it's working or not by like a blue bar like this, meaning it's only going to the sends. And then what you have to do is manually put down little MIDI clips. And these MIDI clips just stick down a C3. C3, especially if you have a sampler. If you're using a synth noise thing, then not so much. So you make a really tiny MIDI clip. Like this. And then you just alt-click and drag it around wherever all your drums are. Or what you do is you never do this. You do your drum loops or whatever. Then you copy and paste your drum machine track onto this track. And then you just delete everything that isn't the kick and snare or whatever in the actual MIDI if you had a bunch of MIDI. It takes the MIDI and it's a little more manual. There's no like auto way to do it as well without attaching it to your kick. But then it's only on your kick, and then if you want to have your snare do it too, you need to have them in a group. But then your kick and snare are like inconsistent, so it's nice to always have a white noise do it, because you'll have less sidechain for a snare than the kick, and then that just sounds weird because they're the two main percussive elements. So it sounds nice when they both take the same volume, or else on a listening perspective, you'll feel like the snare or the kick is weaker than the other, which isn't the case. You want them to be equally powerful. In something like dubstep. Not so much like electro, then at that point you want a snare to be a little bit of a color, and then I probably wouldn't even sidechain by a snare then. I would only sidechain like for the kick purposes. So, we have that out of the way. Now let's talk about your drums. Well, firstly, in your drums, there seems to be something weird kind of going on here. This one comes early. It does work. I don't know if it works with the on-point beats you had twice before, and then you go and switch it up like that into it in context, I suppose. Yeah, I think they would have been better off being on the beat there. Your kick also doesn't sound that bad. I do think your kick lacks a little bit of sub-frequencies, so you could get that through layering or whatnot, but I saw in your project that the kick you initially used, because I have your project file, I saw that the kick that you initially used actually did have a bit of sub in it. You just cut all the sub out. That's fine if you're going to rely on something like a sub to always be in play whenever your kick's going, but if you want to sidechain your track and then have this kick go, your kick's a little too weak to be sidechaining. So you don't need to sidechain here, or add a little bit of sub to your kick, so adjust the fade out a little bit so you're not just getting the attack and you're getting some of the sub as well. Your drums are done fairly well for this part. In my opinion, your drum reverb has a little bit too much tail. It's nice to have that tail, say, on a snare, but to have them on hi-hats is a bit too much because you're playing the hi-hats like all the time. Like if we listen to like this group right now, now it sounds too mono. Would have been nicer if it was quieter, because initially it sounded like this, which is pretty overkill, just saying. And I don't know if you actually sidechained your reverb or not, but this reverb doesn't sound sidechained. It sounds pretty untouched. Again, you can sidechain your hi-hats if you want, if they're interfering with your kick, but your kick doesn't have any high end, so you're probably okay in that department. Those work okay together. The ride, though, I think could use a bit of sidechain. Never mind, you have it on there. Good work. You sure showed me. And then we come over here. Let's get like strict arrangement under control right now. When I'm zoomed out, I have the 1, 9, 17, 25, 23. This is kind of like key points. So your drop started on an 8-bar phrase, which is great. And your drop was over after a total of 16 bars. So that, again, is good. You stuck to that arrangement fairly well, and this is going to relate to the drums in the sense that, you know, you kind of want to follow 8-bar patterns. However, for example, here you started to introduce rides after 4 bars, which is a little weird. And you started to have some hi-hats come out for 2 bars, and then you stop the hi-hats. There's nothing wrong with that. In my opinion, and in my personal preference, what I would have done was I try to refrain from adding elements earlier than 8 bars, because there's something about like the 8-bar repetition that's nice to have. There's something about the 8-bar repetition that's very nice to have with minor changes. So say in a lead, obviously after every 4 bars, you're probably going to want to change it. And the hi-hats do work. Like adding rides in definitely does work. And like, you know, that's fine. All right, so yes, let's discuss this situation. So I get where you're going here. This kind of sounds like a pre-build to me. Cool. And it works. You know, you do have like those 16 bars there to totally do like a bit of a relaxing, like chorusy part, and then start the build and go into the drop. And then that makes a little more sense to why this was arranged the way it was. However, in your build, you're kind of like, you're on the road to building tension. However, you're not actually like building it. You can tell that something's going to change, but you don't really feel that something's going to change, if you know what I mean. And then you get to this point, and then all your drums like disappear, and then there's just like a ton of like empty space, so much empty space, and then you get into the drop. As far as the drums and the drop go, yes, it was with this percussive sound. It sounded a little weird that it was being started on the kick sometime. Maybe if it was faded in a little more, it would be nicer, but it sounded like there's some conflicting transients. Drum pattern's like, okay. It works with the song for sure, like with your drop. Your snare and kick probably could have been louder by like 3 more decibels or something. Also would have liked to see another kick over here. And then a snare here. And then yeah, cool. Bring in more drums. Be careful of the rides. They can be sometimes overpowering if they're left too loud or too full. They can sometimes feel a little overpowering in a song. In the case of this song, they are a bit loud. Let's try taking off 5. Good. And I think another 3 decibels could be dropped off the hi-hats. And it helps so much too when you even getting this part, having that sort of volume for your kick and stuff helps a lot here. You know, your hi-hats are much softer, your rides are a little smoother. You have less stuff jumping out at you. It is a little weird that like your ride's getting louder as this progression goes. The ride is a little bit of an ugly sound, in my opinion. It's got perfect use for like drum beats, but like standalone, just using it to kind of fill in space, it's not the best. Not the best tool you could have used in terms of sounds. Like you probably could have just ignored the kicks and left the hi-hats and just did this. And maybe we did like a like that. Do it fast enough. do something like this, like a to-do. And we'll add in the ride over here, say, and see what this sounds like. I also noticed in your project file you were doing a lot of fading with these things over here in your faders. I would never automate faders. It makes it very hard to mix later on. It makes it like impossible. So use the Control Alt F or Command Alt F thing, and just pull out these little guys and fade like that. They work just fine. Just so you know, you can use these guys and everything will be okay. Like, yeah, that sounds cool. Let's listen to this again. This part works too. You can take away the bass and hi-hat attention because you have a lead going on now in the form of like a plucky bass. Here, hi-hats, too loud in my opinion. I'm gonna go ahead and turn these ones down. All right, let's check our arrangement. This part could use a little bass. Also, be careful with what sounds like dotted notes you have going on in the background with some plucks. So other than that, I think the drums are pretty good. I mean, just like reverb. Obviously, just controlling some volume would be nice. Also, I thought this was a hats verb, but apparently it has piano reverb in it as well. But yeah, just tone down some of the volume of your rides and hats. Make your kick and snare a little louder, or maybe add a bit of transients to them somehow using parallel compression. And I mean, if you want to know, all you do is you make a send track, and you send your kick and snare to it, or anything you want to have more transient, and then you'll put like a glue compressor on, or any compressor, and just take the threshold down like a lot, and put the attack way up, and take the release way down. And then you can put the makeup maybe like 10 or something. And then when you add things to it, like say this snare. If we listen, all we have like a much louder transient in this snare. That's on that track, so we can mix that in with our sound now. The compressed signal needs to be quieter, but you need to mix it into where it's adding, but not being too loud. You hear the difference? Makes it like pop out a little more. So that's something you could do as well. You can use it with the kick and everything. So the parallel compression, you're essentially just trying to take just the transient out of the sounds you have automatically by using a compressor. So you're like, compressor, don't act right away, but you know, let some of the transient through, and then like crush the volume of everything else, and then you can mix in like basically just the transient to your drums. And this is like exactly what a transient processor is going to do anyways. It's just going to do it a little more intuitively. that's all I have to say about the drums. Like the samples and stuff like aren't bad. Like they don't sound like that bad as they are. And the intro, they could be a little more interesting. But that's about it. So cool. On to our basses. Pop. Like, let's just take this from a pop standpoint. It's a little weird to bring in a sub like this. Like, that's so... It's just so stable and static. To just bring it in, and then, like, gone. And then basically just bring it in again at, like, 4 bars later. And then let it run for, like, 8 bars. And then take it out. It's a little weird from a pop standpoint. This sound here, which was kind of cool. My only problem with it is the frequency shifter thing you have at the end that makes it like go way up. Other than that, it was pretty well executed. Cool bass fill. Fits real nice with the song. Might have a bit too much reverb on it. It could be louder. Your chord bass. I think it might have a little too much movement, and it might be a little too low for something to go underneath a chord. And the movement's not even the bad part. It just definitely sounds like it's too low. Remember, you have a sub playing, so you don't need to have your basses super low. You can use the high textures of the bass sounds to go with your chords if you're going to be using a separate sub, which you are. Your sub is definitely clicky. I'm not sure what you use for it, but say you use like a harmer or anything. You have to make sure the attack and release envelopes are set up nicely so that when you play your note, it doesn't click. So let's pretend we're making a sub in a serum, which I cannot find. Here it is. So we're going to make a sub in a serum. With something like a saw wave, it doesn't matter what the state of the attack and release envelopes are, because the sound itself is so crunchy, you're not going to notice the start and end of the waveform. This doesn't matter. When you come to something softer like a sub, and you hear those clicks, these are frequencies that our ears know don't belong in this sort of sound. So you might have to, say, put up this to 5 milliseconds. And now we've eliminated most of it, but it might need a little bit of release too. Like do 30 and maybe put this to 10 or 15. So now this is when I press this MIDI key, we won't hear anything that doesn't belong in a sine wave. I hear when I release it. That's because the release is too short. Pretty good. Now, the attack on this, though, is a little too much, so we might have to bring it down. Now, that's not bad anymore. This is pretty okay. So you have to mess with the attack and release a bit. You want to get the attack so the sound is like a little softer, but you don't want to compromise the strength of it by having like too long of a fade in. Same thing with the release. Then you start getting muddy stuff because if your release is too long, you have all these releases overlapping and that just starts to sound gross. That's how you could fix up your sub. Your sub also sounds a little plain, so I would recommend taking maybe like a triangle wave. Now we have a sound more like this. I get some distortion, some like soft clip. It's going to sound like this. I'm going to go ahead and grab a filter. I'm going to put it on high 24 and put the cutoff down to like 200-ish. Try square wave. If we check this out in a equalizer, all we're doing is adding some overtones. They're completely harmonically correct, so it's not going to make a huge difference. And it's fine for your sub to have a little bit of these overtones. They might be a little too loud, so we turn them down. But it makes them a little more interesting. The distortion alone makes it a little more interesting. Versus this, we get some more overtones in here, and then we can accentuate them with the square wave. So that's something you can do to liven up your subs a little more, so they sound a little more colorful. I have no real complaints about your bass pluck that you have going on here. They have an okay amount of side in them. It's totally fine to have some side information in those, because just make sure you keep them out of your bass. Like your sub. What do we have here? We have a bass verb. That basically isn't even completely bass verb. I just thought it was. Like, you know, other than that, like, this, just the only complaints were kind of with the way you ranged your sub a little bit. The sub was just a little, like, again, this is just something that's, like, not really my taste or just not common in pop music. It's just to bring in subs, like, randomly. And, you know, usually you have some sort of, like, kick come in with the sub. And then you don't usually play loud subs by themselves as is. You might do, like, a low saw sort of bass and then just, like, filter off some stuff a little bit and then have it play very softly. So just, like, so that way there's somewhat clean stuff down there, but it's not very loud. Having it completely empty at any time might be a bit of a bad idea, but you can get away with that, like, in like the ways you have. Totally, your sub. You have sub where you absolutely need the sub, though I feel like you've added sub in a few places that you might not need sub that loud, at least. Mainly in the start here, just randomly, and in the build sort of stuff that you've got going on. And then even again over here. Over here it works. But then you get rid of it when you bring back in your drop chords. So it seems weird. Like, you could have waited to add the sub until you got to your drop chords over here. Leads. I can appreciate the melodicness of them. From a pop standard, they're not catchy, which is fine. Like, they don't have the hook in them because they are melodically intuitive, which means that no one's going to follow them or, like, listen and be, like, super interested right away. So you kind of have to listen to, like, how the whole 8 bars or 16 bars of a melodic phrase will turn out rather than just 2 bars. On a melodic standpoint, like, as a melody, it is, like, a pretty cute little melody. I'm afraid your lead here might be a little bit too clicky and compressed / distorted. I notice you're bringing in leads together. That's cool. Make sure that you have them under control in your master channel. If you're doing a sort of thing, I notice it's why you grouped your leads together. So I did the same here because you like to use multiple leads and layers, and that's smart. That's a way to get lots of melodic content into your song. Oh, sweet. I finally got my VSTs in Reason. Yes. That was pretty cool. Use that. That's cool. I thought this sounded very Daft Punky to me, so I called it Le Lead. Get it? Because they're French. Ha ha ha. But yeah, the melody stuff you've got going on, like, it's pretty fine. Like, I never had any complaints. Like, there's never any points in the song where I'm really like, the melody. Like, you bring it in appropriate times. You bring it in on appropriate time, so it's appropriate. It's not inappropriate. It's appropriate. It works. You're getting different timbres in there for the leads, which is great. It's making great use of the space that isn't really there. So you have like your leads taking up all your high end and some sort of like little cute bass pluck and then a sub, and it works good. So past the leads, let's go down to the chords. Now I have taken about a year's worth of advanced popular like music theory at my university. So I mean, I'm also still at the same point not someone who's like a Mozart with music theory who's like, oh, I don't really like that minor seventh add that you've got going on there, or something like that. So, like, it's hard to talk about chord progressions because, like, chord progressions are actually, like, the least important part of any song. Like, any pop song that has a chord progression that sounds good is very commonly using, like, the standard, like, 1, 4, 5, 6, or anything like that, like those 4 chord progressions. Those 4, like, literally there's 4 chords and in a progression, and people are very commonly using 4 chords. Chords have little to do with anything. They just kind of have to be voiced correctly. So the melody or the hook, in the case where the chords are the thing of the song, like where someone's like, oh, I made a sick chord progression. If it's actually a good chord progression, the reason why is because it kind of has like the melody or hook built into it with the way the voicings were done and the way you jump intervals with it, which makes it sound good. If you don't do that with your chords, you can still have like, you know, a catchy melodic hook or whatever on top of it, or vocals, and no one freaking notices at all. So like, it doesn't even matter. Is it definitely like minor chords? And all these sound fine. I kind of like this. They could maybe be a little more plucker. This isn't even the chord verb. That's just like, it's like the pad reverb. So that was cool. And I see you have some layering going on here. That's clever. You have your bitey part of the chords, kind of cheesy sounding. And then you have the width. The width to them is here. These chords with your bass sound like something that would come out of Flux Pavilion. Have you ever watched Flux Pavilion Against the Clock? I literally heard this chord progression and I was like, huh, sounded like something like a chord stack he would make and sort of a chord progression he might go with. I don't even like Flux Pavilion, but he's a popular person, so I mean, that's a compliment. Because he obviously makes good music. Okay, so that's the chord stuff. Cool, done well. In the song, I mean, it was all done kind of well. Like, it kind of sounds like you might have cut away too much from the chords now that I'm looking at it. Huh. You probably could have taken a little high end off the chords, more or less in this area where your leads are very prominent. So you could have taken away some here. And then this sort of area here are really screechy, squealy stuff that you could have brought up or down. Maybe it makes it sound nice and bright if you do this. Depends on the sound you're going for. If you want it to be dark, maybe just don't do anything there or just take it down or whatever. You know, if we just come to the Pro Q and take a little listen here. Those are definitely some pretty unpleasant sounds, so maybe I'll take them down a bit, or we can listen without. And you could have done it more specifically on the chords too. Just a little more of that could have been gone. And I cut these kind of hard, but usually chords like 150 is a good spot to cut. These sound a little muddy to me. These sound a little more cleaned up. Especially if they're going to be working with the leads like they are. This actually could have probably benefited from some more high-end. Though, if we see here, we're not seemingly able to EQ it in. Unless maybe you'll try this. So, that's in this situation where Saturn Q thingy... Fab Filter Saturn comes into play. Let's put this after the Saturn. Check this out. Band, bam, 5K, max distortion. See that huge difference I just made there? You can use Saturn to just fake in frequencies. Like, this is the great thing about distortion. It's going to compress shit so hard it brings it back. It, like, forces the sound to be bright at the top end. It helps your lead, like, really punch out. Another thing your lead could have benefited from is being louder than the reverb. It's like there's a lot of reverb drowning going on here. Double check and control your reverbs as much as possible. Maybe we'll bring down a bit of this again. Cool. And then you could have compressed it with literally anything. Again. Doesn't sound like it has OTT though. To soften it up, I'll take all the attacks away, add some more release. It's definitely OTT soft clip. So, before, after. Sounds a little brighter. I don't know if it... Something that has to be taken into consideration, though, is when you get high, you're going to kill your viewers or listeners. So, I mean, this might be something that you want to turn off or on. The distortion might be something you need to automate for certain parts of the song, like turn off whenever you go into like an octave higher phrase, just turn off the distortion just entirely, like automate this little like show automation in new lane. And then like maybe here I'll just do that quick. Or something like that helps a bit, but you know, then that causes sound inconsistencies. So that's where I just went with that. Now let's go on to the effect sounds. Not bad. So I called this one obnoxious noise because it's obnoxious. There's so much low end in there. Like, I know you EQ'd it out, but like you need more. Gone. Do this again here and do this like that. See that? There's so much noise. You could have got a little bit of distortion in there from Saturn again, like the upper half. Just nice and bright. That would have been a sweet option you could have done. You could roll off a bit of high end here if you want. But like a little too low for my taste, or there's not enough like volume mod going on. It's also kind of loud and a little uninteresting. I had pointed out in the previous sort of thing I had done, you know, you could take like a phaser, zoom in real nice on this. So it's switching on the... So it's saying it's going from here to here or something. So we can do some automation here. So we have our obnoxious sound. And then maybe before we do... Or you know what? We'll do the Pro Q here. Like that. And then we'll do a phaser. And then in this here, what I'm going to do is put this here somewhere or something. Put the rate up all the way. And I'm going to just come down here and mess with this wet. Dry wet knob. So we're starting here and going to here. I'm going to do this, hold shift, drag down, just clip that out or something. And then... You know, you could change some frequencies. Makes it sound watery, then you can phase it out again. Like so. Oh, cool. That helps make it a little stereo, make it sound a little more than just noise. Something I kind of suggested there. Vocals are a little loud sometimes. They do work. I think when they get low like this... You know what? No, they actually fit with the song. Ignore that. And that's all, really. It's just to try to control your noise a little bit, and you could use more FX. I like to use lots of FX. Lots and lots and lots of FX. And now we're on to this pad. More EQ needs to be done here. This cut you got going on is, I think, a little too unnatural for the sound. So to repair that, I think I might just do like this. Like a natural repair. You could take some of the high end off because it doesn't need it. And then we'll go in here a little surgically with it too and get some mud out. Sounds much more like a background item now. And then overall in the arrangement ain't half bad. Just stick to that 8 bars and no one can ever really complain about your arrangement. But I will do it anyways. The intro, a little too long, I think. I think it's a little too long. And then we've got, let's see. The builds, mainly the first one. Whatever is going on here, I would So this is the start of your breakdown, not your breakdown, your pre-build or whatever, your chorus, let's say. Cool. When you get to this 25th bar, you should be like kick, snare, hi-hats, or something, and like rising sounds, pitch things, high pass filters. But what happens is you keep going. I think you're high passing stuff. And that's a cool sound, how you just like stopped, like you're like... But then what's weird is when you go into this. It's not my cup of tea. Usually like fills before drops are like 4 bars. Sorry, not 4 bars. 1 bar or 1.5 bars. And that's kind of like the fill period. 4 bars is like a pretty intense period of time to like try to drag out some sort of like part to the drop. I mean, in some cases it can work, and you have to do it like in certain ways, and maybe this works for some people. But personally, I'm not a fan of the like the long fall down in noise, and it comes back and or whatever. I mean, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you heard it in a song somewhere, and the song's super popular. Then by all means. But in my style of music, I wouldn't do that. It would be cool to hear some like percussion and rising elements coming in. And then you had like a bar or something. It could even just be empty space. Or that. Exactly that. But you could have kept the chords and everything here. You could have had the noise rise, but not fall, maybe. Like you could have just had, like, let's just say we delete this. Like it would have been maybe okay if you just had done this or something. Like more rise, more noise rise, and then do it like that. Get some like steady beats in there, maybe get a little faster. High pass things, throw in some percussion, rising elements, high pass, high pass, high pass, high pass. Tune, pitch, things to like kind of build the tension. Because the tension kind of falls apart when you do the noise thing. The tension is just like, and it's kind of like too long to really hold on to the tension. So, about it. So, this is 1 drop. Cool. Another drop. I can appreciate that you changed the lead so it doesn't stay like boring or anything. Cool. And the last drop is still pretty freaking cool. Sounds like your drums are kind of falling apart. I don't think they're working rhythmically a few times there. The only complaint is the piano. I think you're having some clashing sounds. It's hard to have like synth chords go with a piano because they quickly start to clash because they both take up like the same set of frequencies, sort of. So like it's a little dangerous. So watch out. Might want to. Like, what happens if we took the piano out? Might actually sound better, you know? The ending was a little choppy. Didn't sound very smooth. I think that could use some more work. Some more transition sounds like in the FX and stuff, and whatever sounds good, but I think it's a little too choppy. That's it. But yeah, and then the piano, you know, like maybe make that work a little better. Or just take the piano out. I think it sounds maybe a little better without the piano. Piano stuff's pretty cool. I'm kind of interested what piano this is. Doesn't sound like anything out of Contact. But yeah, that's it. So cool. I never looked at your mastering because you kind of have some mastering. But this is how I'd recommend doing your mastering for the most part. Do your EQ8, set it up like this, mid-side mode. You have a mid. I have a 30 kilohertz cuts at a 4 slope. And then I have a 15 kilohertz high cut at a 4 slope on the mid section. And if we switch over to the side, all I got is a 125 side 4 slope cut. This really just cleans up the spectrum. I don't know if you've done this beforehand. I can't tell, honestly. I think you did do it. And then, like, you know, limiter's fine. If you want to master things, I would look into glue compressor and like, go grab a glue compressor and maybe a multiband dynamics we can come up with, or anything you have from FabFilter. Like, I have everything from them, so like if you have a bunch of FabFilter stuff, go for it. Totally. Yep. So that's the end of this. I hope you liked it. And I'll talk about it a little bit maybe. And it's going to be on YouTube for everyone to see if they're interested seeing. Remember, if you guys want me to do this for your song, I can do it. Just gotta ask and have a little bit of monies, because that's like, you know, it is a lot of work. Like, I'm gonna end up spending, like, I've already spent 3 hours on this, and I redid it because I figured out how to get the stems for it. And then I redid it because I figured out how to get the stems from him after looking through the export options here, and you can do the individual tracks. So I'm going to end up spending like 6 hours doing this, and I'm only asking for like $10. And it's like a 1 hour-ish feedback like on YouTube for you to watch forever. And it's not like bad feedback or anything. It's definitely stuff you can learn from. And I'll even answer a few questions too, if you need me to clarify on some things. The videos are nicely organized, lots of editing. But like for example, if I get private tutoring for me is like $30 an hour. And then this took me 6 hours to do it. I'm only asking for $10. So like, it's a pretty sweet deal. Like, if you don't need precise one-on-one lessons, you just need me to talk about crap over your song, that's something I can do. And it's just 10 USD or whatever. So thank you, Kristian, for supporting me, my knowledge, and entrusting me to provide you with this service. And I hope I have adequately provided you with this service. Thanks for watching.